We do not know how to act in these COVID times. That is not your fault. We have never been through anything like this. However, we can learn from experts. I'm calling it a combination of pandemic and etiquette, Pandemiquette. And a person that we're going to rely on to tell us how we should act is Elaine Swann. She's of the Swann School of Protocol. Elaine, help us.
Oh, my word. There is so much happening right now, and I really am on a quest right now to really try to help us get through this moment in time. Absolutely.
Okay, so let me give you a scenario that so many of us have encountered, and I'm going to do a public one and then a private one, and that is when someone is just too close to us and you feel uncomfortable. Let's say you are at the Trader Joe's and there's someone who is 2 feet away from you. How do you handle a situation like that?
Yeah, so it's really important for us to make sure that we're not pointing the finger and doing so in a very accusing manner. And my recommendation is to make sure that we make that moment more so about us and we, because our goal is to really try to get through this whole thing together. So you can turn to the person and simply say, excuse me, I want to make sure that we are practicing proper social distancing. So can we put just a little bit of space between us right now, instead of telling them back up or what have you, but just asking them to put a little space in between us right now. I think it's important that we still follow these guidelines. So make it more so about we, so it's collective. It's the approach is more about the fact that we are really in this thing together.
Okay, so now let's say you're in that same public space and you see a whole bunch of people not wearing masks. What do you do?
Yeah, if you're in that same public space, you see a whole bunch of people not wearing masks, my recommendation is to just let crazy be crazy and leave them alone. You see, the thing is, unless someone's behavior is impacting you personally, meaning they're in your personal space, then you shouldn't say anything to them at all. And the reason why is because the amount of time it would take for you to school someone or talk to them and try to dig in and explain your perspective with them, the amount of time that you would spend doing that, you could have spent that time finishing up your transaction or whatever it is and going about your merry way. Because if people make a choice or a decision to do something in public, there's not much that you can say in that particular instance to cause them to shift and change their mindset. So I wrote a book called Let Crazy Be Crazy, and so follow the title of that book, which is just Let Crazy Be Crazy and leave those folks alone.
I love that advice. Now let's talk about people who are actually closer to us. What about our friends? And we've missed them. We want to be back closer to them. Social bubbles are allowed, but the question is, how do we do this with some grace?
Right. The best way to approach this with grace is to make sure that we have lots of friends, but not everyone's going to be in that individual social bubble, right? So for the folks who are outside of that social bubble and you're not getting together with regularly, be mindful and be sensitive to how they might feel about it. So my recommendation is to avoid, posting photos of that social bubble group. If you take some sort of selfie for yourself at the time and saying, I'm enjoying myself, whatever, that's great. But when you start showing other folks in that photo, it can really be very off-putting for the friends who are not in that bubble. So my recommendation is to be sensitive to the folks that you're connected with who are not really part of that inner circle. And if, in fact, someone does find out that some sort of event took place and they were left out, then my recommendation is just to say to that person, right now I'm really trying to keep my gathering small, but I'm really looking forward to the time when you and I can get back together again.
I think that's really nice. I also want to talk about going out to a restaurant. We really want to make sure that we are respecting the people who are putting their own health at risk to service at these restaurants. And there's also an etiquette about what to do with our masks that we bring to the table.
So when you arrive at the restaurant, walk in, of course, still wearing it. Once you arrive to your seat, there's two things I want folks to be mindful of. Number one, when you do take that mask off, it does not go on top of the table, all right? Because etiquette would dictate that nothing goes on top of the table except for food. That includes your cell phone as well. And so the mask should not either. You can keep the mask on your person in some way, form, or fashion. You can place it in your purse or your bag or your pocket or what have you. And my recommendation is to put it inside a little baggie first, right? Or you can place it on your lap underneath your napkin. You want to make sure that you have that mask accessible. So when your server comes over to take your order or to ask questions or deliver food, you can easily place it right back on without and still at the same time keep yourself safe as well as your server safe.
Elaine Swann handing out some Pandemiquette for us today. You have taught me so much. I really appreciate you.
It's my pleasure.